This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, Hurricane Michael has become even stronger than many expected. Now it's a huge Category 4 storm, and nearly 400,000 people have already evacuated before it comes ashore early this afternoon. Plus, the Christian baker whose gay wedding cake case went to the Supreme Court is involved in another dispute with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. We're going to bring you an update on that. And a new archaeological find in Israel shows us the link between the name of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago and today. We'll have those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin now with Hurricane Michael. The monster storm is taking direct aim at the Florida Panhandle. Forecasters warn it could become one of the worst in that region's history, with a dangerous storm surge of up to 12 feet. States of emergency have been declared in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. Florida Governor Rick Scott warned residents to evacuate.
Remember, we can rebuild your house. We cannot rebuild your life. Think about your kids, your grandkids, all your family members. Take care of them. Take this seriously and keep your family safe.
With us now by Skype is Weatherbell Chief Forecaster Joe Bastardi. Welcome, Joe.
Well, I hate coming on during these bad situations. Maybe someday I'll be on when the weather's nice, because the weather's nice most of the time. Wanted to say something, Mark. My company, and again, folks, sorry if this sounds sort of pompous, but we've been forecasting from last week that we had a big hurricane threat coming into the Gulf. And we actually had a forecast of a strong Category 3, Category 4 storm hitting from Sunday night is when we made the forecast for our clients. And of course, what I try to do is distribute it to media outlets. And unfortunately, what happens in storms like this is nobody pays attention. Well, I'm not going to say nobody, but people don't pay attention until it's on top of them. I don't want you to think this is anything mysterious about this. This was a textbook case for why a storm should become very, very strong. And you can only warn the people who are listening. And I hope these people are getting out of the way. This is the worst storm to ever strike the Florida Panhandle. Hands down. It's going to beat Opal, going to blow away Dennis from 2005. And it's one of only a handful of storms in the past 30 years that's hitting as intense as it has been. In other words, you saw Florence did not hit at its peak. Most of the hurricanes the last 30 years haven't been hitting at its peak. Harvey did last year. Charlie did in 2004. So this is because of the overall pattern. Believe it or not, down the road there's linkage to a bad winter with October hurricanes. So this is a fascinating situation as far as how all this is going. Now, let me say, this is going to get inland between noon and 3, still be a hurricane up to around midnight tonight. Be a strong tropical storm coming rapidly northeastern through the Carolinas, emerging about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday between Virginia Beach and Cape Hatteras. And what's going to happen in tidewater is, as this storm gets close to the water, you will get a very strong north wind, gusts to 60, 70 miles an hour will develop out of the north. And you'll see that happen in the morning on Friday. The problem in the Carolinas, this is the kind of storm's going to knock down some trees and power lines in areas that they've just put it back up. But there's going to be a swath of 3 to 6, locally 12-inch rains in the areas that Florence hit. And those rivers aren't back in their banks yet in a lot of cases. So that's going to re-aggravate flood problems in there. So there's no question about the magnitude of the storm. I can't overstate, no matter what I say, it's as big or bigger than anything I'm trying to portray here.
How unusual is this? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, for a storm to hit the coast of the U.S. at its peak.
Well, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it wasn't unusual at all. They all were doing that, which is why those years are legendary. But I do think that there is a linkage between the warmth of the globe, and again, I believe it's all natural, and the lack of that type of activity, because if you have lower than average surface pressures across the United States and in Canada, actually disrupts some of the processes in the tropics. But look, this was well telegraphed. I know everybody doesn't get our site at weatherbell.com, but I mean, I was on with people, and I may have said it here on CBN. The last day I did Florence, I said, I'll probably see you again in October, because you can see this pattern coming. what we have, folks, in Alberto, Gordon, and Florence, we had something in common from years in the past. We call it the Newfoundland wheel. Big high-pressure system over the northeast United States steers hurricanes into the United States. The old-timers, and I'm sort of getting to be an old-timer, they taught me about that. So a certain pattern was setting up, and you could see it setting up. And even if the models don't have the storm will show up. It's sort of one of these things, if you build it, they will come. So I've been putting this out, trying to get this out in public, trying to show people, because I think people need to be educated as to the why before the what, not the why after the what. Everybody wakes up when the storm shows up and says, where did this come from? How did this happen? But it's all there before, at least the hints at it, and you've got to look at the signals.
All right, Joe Bastardi of Weather Bell, thanks so much for your time and your insights, Joe.
Oh, thank you for having me. And again, I like to show up. I'm waiting on a sunny day. I'd like to show up for that, too. I'll probably see you tomorrow morning because this is still going to be rampaging. So I'll see you then.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for keeping on top of it.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.
You too. Well, here's a look now at some of the other major stories we're following in the CBN newsroom today. Newly appointed Justice Brett Kavanaugh took the bench with his new Supreme Court colleagues for the first time Tuesday. Despite the divided court with 5 conservatives and 4 liberals, the justices have a tradition of civility. Kavanaugh telling reporters he will always be a team player. Kavanaugh also saying he's proud all 4 of his newly hired law clerks are women, a first in the history of the Supreme Court. The Congressional Leadership Fund is looking for more money for campaigns to help stop a Democratic takeover of the House. Reuters reports a memo released Tuesday stated the committee has already spent $90 million on key House races, but that wasn't enough. The memo warns donors that Democrats have outspent Republicans by $50 million. The memo did also show that voter approval of President Trump has risen by 5% across 20 critical House districts following the Kavanaugh controversy. After a 4-year legal battle, Christian bakers in Northern Ireland won their Supreme Court case. Owners of Asher's Baking Company came under fire for refusing an order for a cake from a gay rights activist. The court held up a ruling Wednesday that Asher's acted lawfully and did not discriminate against anyone. Judges held it was the message the bakery objected to, not the customer. And you can find out more about these and other important stories on CBNNews.com. President Trump says he's narrowed his list of possible replacements for Nikki Haley down to 5 people. Haley, Trump's ambassador to the United Nations, announced her resignation Tuesday. The president says he plans to announce his decision on her replacement in 2 to 3 weeks. I spoke with our senior international regarding reaction from the UN and the international community.
Well, of course, they're all very upset. They saw this as a surprise. They didn't know it was coming. I've been following a number of the tweets and so forth. I want to share one with you. This is from Human Rights Watch. Hillel Nuer. They keep a close eye on Israel and what is happening at the UN with Israel. They were very good friends with Nikki Haley. This is what Hillel said. He said, I had to learn that Ambassador Nikki Haley's resigning, facing an assembly of dictatorships and their apologists. History will record that she stood up to her faith, fairness, and human rights, that she did so with courage, eloquence, and grace. I will miss her. So many of the diplomats will miss Nikki Haley, Mark, and they're very sad to see her go. Publicly, they may not say that. Privately, they admired her.
Definitely a woman of courage. Can
Yes.
you break it down for us about her accomplishments in the approximately 2 years that she served for the U.S. as ambassador, including her record on religious and defending persecuted believers worldwide?
Well, of course, it wasn't just Christians that she defended. She came to the defense of the Rohingya refugees, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. They are from Myanmar. They were forced because of violence against them to go and become refugees in neighboring Bangladesh. She spoke out forcefully on their behalf, also for religious freedom around the world. But I think, Mark, what she'll be most remembered for is her commitment to the state of Israel, how she defended Israel when Israel repeatedly came under fire at the UN. Also, when she said, look, we have a right to put our embassy where we want to put it, at the time that the U.S. moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yes, she was definitely a staunch defender of Israel.
Of course, and she always has been.
Okay.
Yes.
What else can you tell us about Nikki Haley? I mean, we talked a little bit about possible plans. What is your gut feeling? What do you think is going to be happening with her in the future?
Oh, Nikki Haley isn't done yet. Look, she's young. She's only in her mid-40s. Look for her to possibly become a presidential candidate in 2024. Once Donald Trump is done running for re-election and so forth, Mark. But I've got to say one thing. Some people are saying the timing of this is interesting given that the president met with Rod Rosenstein on Air Force One last night, and then bam, the next morning Nikki Haley resigns. Was she the one, the author of that op-ed piece in the New York Times, the anonymous op-ed piece from a senior administration official that was critical of the president and his judgments?
Anything else you can tell us about her faith in office?
Well, look, she was very private about her faith. She received a lot of criticism when she was governor and running for governor of South Carolina because she was raised a Sikh Hindu. Her parents, of course, from India. She's from Indian heritage, but she converted to Christianity years ago, and she and her husband both are practicing and Methodists. They worship regularly in church.
All right, Gary, thanks so much for your insights,
Certainly.
as always. Inflation continues to sink the Venezuelan economy in a death spiral. Consumer prices rose nearly 500,000% in the past year. Monthly inflation rose another 10% from August to September. The International Monetary Fund predicts prices could rise 1,000,000% this year. The inflationary surge is happening as a broader economic meltdown is destroying Venezuela's economy under the government's radical socialist policies. Coming up, a court battle between the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and Christian baker Jack Phillips over a gay wedding cake went all the way to the Supreme Court earlier this year, with Phillips winning a narrow victory. Now Phillips is involved in another battle with that commission, this time over a transgender cake. We're going to have that story when we come back. Welcome back. The Colorado Civil Rights Commission has come under the spotlight most recently by the Supreme Court, which ruled in June that it showed, quote, clear and impermissible hostility toward Colorado baker Jack Phillips. The High Court ruled narrowly in favor of Phillips. He argued that he did not discriminate when he refused to bake a gay wedding cake after the commission said he did. Now Phillips is tangling with the commission yet again. It says he discriminated against a customer who wanted him to bake a transgender cake. That cake was ordered to celebrate a gender transition. Here's our interview on this story. And Jenna Ellis with the Dr. Dobson Family Policy Institute is with us to talk more about what is happening with Phillips and with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. Welcome, Jenna. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jack Phillips has been in the news again recently for what seems to be the exact same issue that we thought the Supreme Court decided last June. What's going on?
Yeah, and so the Supreme Court, as you mentioned, did decide this very narrowly, and it was really that the 7 justices talked about the Civil Rights Commission being overtly hostile to the baker. And what a lot of the evangelical community said about that particular case was that, well, now the Civil Rights Commission just won't be as open and overtly hostile, but they'll still really be fundamentally saying, Jack Phillips, you have to bake the cake. And so what happened in this case is that another individual who's actually an attorney in Colorado walked into his shop the very same day that the Supreme Court granted hearing of the initial case and asked for that transgender cake to have a pink frosting with the blue interior to celebrate a gender transition. Phillips again politely declined, saying that that went against his sincerely held beliefs. And now the same Colorado Civil Rights Commission, going against the Supreme Court case, has found probable cause to say, yes, you are guilty of violating Colorado's Anti-Discrimination Act. So Jack Phillips is finding himself in the exact same position because this is an overtly hostile commission to religious liberty.
What is the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, and how come this case isn't in an actual court?
And that's a great question, because what people need to realize that is going on in Colorado is that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission is not a court of law. This is not where you have a judge and a jury and actual due process. This is a regulatory agency that falls under the Colorado law there, that they are a commission that is just appointed by the governor. These are commissioners that don't have to even be attorneys. And what they're doing is making findings of fact and conclusions of law outside of due process. And so Phillips can't opt out of this commission. He doesn't have the right to a jury. He doesn't have the right to anything but what these commissioners are going to find against him. What's interesting is that the only thing that they have to do to be appointed as a commissioner is to be part of a traditionally discriminated class, but there's no requirement for diversity, meaning that a majority of the commissioners can affiliate with a sexual orientation to get onto that commission, which is what's happening in Colorado. So you basically have a modern day star chamber that is very pro LGBT agenda, and they're very anti sincerely held religious beliefs and free exercise. And so what's happening in Colorado is that we have this alternative method of dispute resolution that doesn't present an opportunity for due process in court.
Jenna, for the faith-based community who have supported Jack throughout this entire process, what would you encourage families to do to get involved or to help?
Well, we definitely need to speak out. And for those in Colorado specifically, like myself and the James Dobson Family Institute, we need to make sure that our legislators are very aware of this and will hopefully put legislation to cure this problem with the Civil Rights Commission under the Department of Regulatory Agencies. That's the location I couldn't recall before. And we also, as a community and as a nationwide faith-based community, and even everyone who understands what the First Amendment is all about, that it's protecting and preserving everyone's opportunity for free exercise of religion and free speech. We need to make sure that our voices are heard. We need to be speaking out, engaging on this issue, and also talk to Alliance Defending Freedom, support that ministry. They're taking very good care of Jack Phillips and making sure to protect these fundamental freedoms in court. And you can also learn more at the DobsonFamilyInstitute.com and the work that we're doing in the Policy Center. Make sure to pray, engage, and vote in November.
All right, Jenna, thanks so much. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Still ahead, a new archaeological discovery from Israel from the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago involving the history of the name of the city of Jerusalem. Thanks for staying with us. Israeli archaeologists have uncovered a unique link between the Jerusalem of 2,000 years ago and today. It comes in the form of the oldest inscription ever found of the modern Hebrew spelling and pronunciation of Jerusalem. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story.
Archaeologists uncovered this pillar during an excavation near the entrance to present-day Jerusalem last winter. The column is here in the Israel Museum's Second Temple Gallery. It's the newest treasure in the exhibit from the time of Jesus. The inscription reads, Hananiah bar Dudalos mi Yerushalayim. Hananiah, the son of Dudalos, from Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, surprisingly for us, is inscribed the same way we write it today and the same way we pronounce it today, Yerushalayim. And it's the first time we have an inscription of this sort from 2,000 years ago, from the times of the Second Temple period.
Senior curator Dodi Mevorach says the name Yerushalayim exists on coins from the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans in 70 AD. Those coins had a political agenda, while this inscription does not.
Here, there is no agenda. It's just an artisan from a potter's village stating his name, his father's name, and stating that he is not from the village, but originally he comes from the big city, from Yerushalayim, Jerusalem.
This site was a pottery workshop that started to develop at the end of the 2nd century before Christ and continued to the 2nd century after Christ.
During the excavations, workers exposed the foundations of a Roman structure. One of the supports was the pillar the Romans had reused. It bore an Aramaic inscription in Hebrew letters typical of the time of Herod the Great.
I saw the column with the inscription. It wasn't clean, but I could recognize some letters, and I saw that it's in Hebrew.
Archaeologist Danit Levy of the Israel Antiquities Authority oversaw the excavation.
I was really excited. My heart went so fast, and I think all the people that was around me could hear it.
The site is about 4.5 miles from the old city, which would have been Jerusalem at that time.
So we now know, in a very simple manner, that Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, was called Shalem, Yerushalem, and Yerushalayim at the same time, which we didn't know before. It's just another piece of a mosaic of how we portray the past.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem.
Fascinating. Well, coming up, a famous Christian singer goes to prison to minister to those inside its walls and bring hope to those who live with hopelessness. We'll have that story for you next. Lauren Daigle is one of the most popular artists in contemporary Christian music right now. Her amazing voice with songs like You Say draw listeners of all ages. She says her visit to Statesville Correction Prison last Friday was, in her words, a day more than I can articulate. She posted this video about the visit on her Facebook page. She went to lead worship and said she saw hope in the face of the hopeless, joy in the wake of sorrow, wealth in the gap of depravity, and life in the midst of death. Take a look. Daigle says the inmates' voices carry deeper into our hearts than the echo of a microphone will ever release. Wow, it's wonderful to see. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com and tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. And you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or check us out on social media. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Mark Martin. We begin with Hurricane Michael. The storm strengthened overnight to a Category 4. The monster storm is taking direct aim at the Florida Panhandle. Forecasters warn it could become one of the worst in the Panhandle's history, with a dangerous storm surge of up to 12 feet. States of emergency have been declared in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. Florida Governor Rick Scott warned residents to evacuate.
Remember, we can rebuild your house. We cannot rebuild your life. Think about your kids, your grandkids, all your family members. Take care of them. Take this seriously and keep your family safe.
Michael is likely to weaken as it moves across the southeastern United States, but its heavy rains and flooding are expected. Here's AccuWeather's forecast for the impact of Hurricane Michael.
Very dangerous Category 4 Hurricane Michael churning swiftly to the north, and we're going to be looking at impact this afternoon near Panama City Beach, if not just a tick points off toward the east. Movement here north at around 13 miles per hour, so it's trucking along. Pressures have been very low, and again, even though the eye's been wobbling a little bit, the overall motion is about 360 degrees. We expect that to tilt more northeasterly as the morning wears into the afternoon. Tornado watch out, where we could be talking about isolated tornadoes through this evening throughout the Big Bend of Florida into southwestern Georgia. Again, quick spin-ups here are going to be a high likelihood. One of the most dangerous components of a landfalling tropical system, in addition to freshwater flooding, is the storm surge. And to the east of landfall is where we have the onshore flow. Of course, the orientation of the Big Bend here, very susceptible to very high storm surge values, potentially 10 feet from Apalachicola, points off to the east. And again, we're talking about landfall this afternoon near Panama City Beach, gusts up to 160 miles per hour. Movement here still keeps us the hurricane into early tonight. That's going to be well north of the 10s. We're talking about widespread trees down, power lines down, but again, making landfall mid-afternoon as a Category 4 hurricane. Tropical storm warnings all the way out toward Wilmington, expecting, again, widespread tree damage here as the winds could still be gusting 60 to 80 miles per hour east of Macon as we venture into late tonight and also into early Thursday. The highest winds, Panama City Beach, points off to the east, where some areas could be gusting, again, close to 160, and 40 to 60 mile per hour winds here all the way into portions of Virginia. Flash flood watches covering a large swath, and keep in mind, still saturated over the Carolinas. There is the potential for 2 to 4, if not 4 to 8 inches of rain there, heaviest closer to landfall.
Nikki Haley is resigning as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Haley has championed America first during her time at the UN, speaking out on North Korea, Russia, and Iran. At the same time, she has taken a strong stand for Israel. She says her Christian faith is the reason for her support. Haley initially told President Trump of her plans to resign about 6 months ago. They met in the Oval Office after her surprise announcement. The president says he will name a successor in the next 2 weeks. He's narrowed his list of possible replacements down to 5 people. Here's a look now at some of the other major stories we're following in the CBN newsroom today. Newly appointed Justice Brett Kavanaugh took the bench with his new Supreme Court colleagues for the first time Tuesday. Despite the divided court with 5 conservatives and 4 liberals, the justices have a tradition of civility. Kavanaugh tells reporters he will always be a team player. Kavanaugh also saying he's proud all 4 of his newly hired law clerks are women, a first in the history of the Supreme Court. The Congressional Leadership Fund is looking for more money for campaigns to help stop a Democratic takeover of the House. Reuters reports a memo released Tuesday stated the committee has already spent $90 million on key House races, but that wasn't enough. The memo warns donors that Democrats have outspent Republicans by $50 million. The memo did also show that voter approval of President Trump has risen by 5% across 20 critical House districts following the Kavanaugh controversy. After a 4-year legal battle, Christian bakers in Northern Ireland won their Supreme Court case. Owners of Asher's Baking Company came under fire for refusing an order for a cake from a gay rights activist. The court held up a ruling Wednesday that Asher's acted lawfully and did not discriminate against anyone. Judges held it was the message the bakery objected to, not the customer. You can find out more about these and other important stories on CBNNews.com. More than 120 missing children were found safe during a one-day human trafficking sting in Michigan. Operation My Safe Kid was conducted by the U.S. Marshals Service, Michigan State Police, and several other agencies in late September. The sting was a missing juvenile sweep to identify and recover missing children from the area, with the emphasis on locating victims of sex trafficking. Out of 301 files of missing children, 123 were identified and recovered safely during the operation. Coming up, it's the story the media ignored and called too controversial for Hollywood. Hear the shocking truth behind America's most prolific serial killer next. It should have been front-page news, but the media largely ignored the 2013 murder trial of Pennsylvania abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell. Now a movie about Gosnell's case highlighting the tragic abuses and hidden crimes within the abortion industry hits theaters this week. Charlene Aaron traveled to Hollywood to bring you this story.
All right, listen up. We're looking for anything that looks like drugs or paraphernalia.
Audiences will finally get to see and hear details of a true-life horror story in Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer.
I don't know, I've never been in an abortion clinic before.
Starring Dean Cain as a detective, the PG-13 film explores the shocking crimes and trial of Philadelphia abortionist Kermit Gosnell, sentenced to life for killing thousands of babies across 3 decades. As far back as the 70s, the sign on Gosnell's West Philadelphia clinic read, Women's Medical Society. Then in 2010, while investigating an illegal prescription drug operation, federal agents discovered what they called a house of horrors. 3 years later, a jury found Gosnell guilty of murdering 3 babies born alive. According to the grand jury report, Gosnell killed them by severing their spinal cords with scissors. Investigators also discovered refrigerators full of aborted fetuses in his offices. The case went largely uncovered by politicians and the mainstream media.
You'd think a case about a medical doctor killing babies born alive would be a big news story. But what was also shocking about the trial of Kermit Gosnell was how little media attention it received. I was in the courtroom for CBN News covering the trial, just one of a handful of journalists in that courtroom. And that really became part of the storyline, which is why it was described as one of the most important stories never told.
We at the Media Research Center, we actually tracked this, and we found it took 56 days before all 3 broadcast networks covered his story. So those are news shows by ABC, NBC, and CBS. So yes, there was absolutely a blackout. And it's hard to know why exactly, because abortion is a huge issue that Americans are concerned about. And this shouldn't just be an issue for, say, people who are against abortion or for abortion. It's a human rights issue. These were atrocities that were happening in this abortion clinic.
Producers Ann McElhinney and Phelan McAleer say they were on a mission to expose the truth about Gosnell. They told CBN News Hollywood rejected the film because of its subject matter.
At every moment of this process, there's been challenges. Like even from the very beginning, when we started the crowdfunding campaign and we went to Kickstarter, where we had raised money before for a different film, for Fragmentation, and suddenly we go to Kickstarter. You know, we tell them our whole campaign, and suddenly they're basically censoring us. They said, "Oh, you can't mention babies murdered. You can't mention babies stabbed to death," and it's like, well, how do we tell the story? Why are we raising money for a film about a thing? We have to describe it. So it wasn't that. It wasn't that. They didn't want us to have this. They didn't want to have anything to do with us.
Actor Kevin Sorbo and his wife Sam supported the movie by urging people to donate to the fundraising campaign. Sorbo recently tweeting, "We raised over $2 million for the making of this film. Hope you all support to see the truth behind this case." Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, is set to release to over 600 theaters nationwide October 12th. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
And Charlene recently spoke with one of the movie's producers who talked about the film's powerful message.
And joining us now is Ann McElhinney, one of the film's producers. Welcome, Ann.
Good. It's good to be here. Thanks so much for having us on.
So, hey, first of all, you guys wrote a book about Kermit Gosnell, and now the movie comes out on Friday. Why a movie?
You know, because nothing really gets to a large population of people more than a movie. I mean, a lot of people don't read books, they don't read the newspaper, but people really like watching movies. And people also in America particularly like watching crime movies. And this is essentially is a crime movie. It's like a Law and Order episode. It's like a courtroom drama. But this really happened. This is a true story. And there's so many aspects of it that should alarm people, not just what Kermit Gosnell did, but all the people who enabled him to do it and all the people who then covered it up once it came to light. You know, the media are very, very badly implicated here, but so are multiple people in hospitals in Philadelphia, in multiple government offices in Pennsylvania who failed to do anything. 2 women died in the clinic. Samika Shaw was a young African-American mother who died in 2000. And that did not inspire the Department of Health to cross the threshold and investigate what had happened to her. It is incredible how protected abortion is. A woman dies and they don't investigate. And, she died, and because they didn't investigate, a number of years later, Karnamaya Mongar died, a Bhutanese refugee, in a city of brotherly love.
Well, let me ask you this really quickly, Ann. Let me ask you this really quickly. I understand you guys had a lot of challenges making this film as far as, getting funding for it. What are some of the other things that happened as you were filming that you ran into?
And it's interesting just listening to your earlier report. I mean, we had extraordinary stories of one of the actresses, in fact, who played a part in the film, who played a part of a woman actually who had changed her mind and decided not to have an abortion. She came to me during the filming and said, "This is my own story." She had read the script. Her name is Tassia Watley, and her testimony actually is on YouTube now. And she said, she read the script and she herself had been having an abortion, was ready for an abortion in Houston, Texas. And the nurse came in and said, and put earphones in her ears and said, why don't you listen to your baby's heartbeat? I'm just going to go and do something, but I'm going to come back. And of course, she lay there and listened to her baby's heartbeat, and then and she put her clothes on and went out. Wow. And her testimony is unbelievable. She says he's 5 years old. At night she watches him breathe, and she can't believe that she was going to destroy someone so precious.
And let me also say that I understand that NPR has banned radio ads for the film, as well as something happening with Google.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about
we've had a lot of opposition, as I said, with the Kickstarter thing. Then we had NPR refusing to run our ads, refusing to run the ads. They wouldn't allow us to call Kermit Gosnell an abortion doctor, even though in all their news stories about Kermit Gosnell, they called him an abortion doctor. And now we have Facebook. Facebook have rejected ad upon ad upon ad that we have put up. And you cannot believe how benign those ads are. One of them has just, Dean Cain sitting there with Tucker Carlson. They rejected that. They rejected that ad. So there has been demonic forces in some ways, I have to say, constantly trying to stop us.
And you compare how the media ignored the Gosnell case with how Democrats have treated Brett Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes. Well, I mean, what we have witnessed as a country, what humanity has had to witness with the way that this man has been treated, with these ridiculous allegations, with uncorroborated allegations, with repeated investigations. I don't know what that man would have had to do to have proved himself worthy to the Democrats. But in the end, I think you and I know very, very well this was never about. It's not even about immigration. It's not about a border wall. It's not about anything but about abortion. This is all about abortion. And those shrieks from the gallery will haunt people, that people were so, possessed, that they were out of control, hysterical at the notion that this man would be confirmed. And I see a huge parallel here between what has happened to us and what happened to him. People expected there to be opposition, but nothing like what happened to that man. Wow. And I think it'll take the country a long time to recover, but no one's going to forget. I think he said he'd forgive people, but I think no one's going to forget what was at the centre of this. And that's why people should come out to the theatres on Friday and support us, just the way that they supported Kavanaugh.
Absolutely. And finally, Anne, what do you hope people, as they're walking away or driving away from the theatre after seeing this on Friday, what do you hope they take away from it? What do you hope they're talking about?
Do you know the one thing that I think is really important about this film is, and it's unlike any other film that's ever been made, and I don't even think in Abby Johnson's film they have it. We have testimony from a good abortion doctor, and we used exactly the words that were used in the trial transcripts describing an abortion. And I don't think that's been done in a movie before. And the testimony cannot be questioned because the person giving the testimony thinks that what they're doing is right. And I think people need that education. People in Ireland voted in favour of abortion. I don't think they knew what they were voting for.
Anne McElhenney, thank you so much for your time. Make sure you go out and you watch this film on Friday. Thank you so much.
An important film will still ahead. A working mom goes from fat to fit in her 40s. Hear her inspiring story and see her amazing results right after this. Thanks for staying with us. A Christian author says she lost more than 125 pounds by using a simple kitchen tool. Brittany Williams, the author of Instant Loss Cookbook, was a busy wife and mom who once weighed 260 pounds, but she decided to make a change and grabbed her unused Instant Pot pressure cooker to make healthy meals. She lost 46 pounds in 3 months, and in a year's time, she shed 125 pounds. She is now sharing her secrets to her incredible weight loss in her book, and she says losing weight does not have to steal your joy. If you're an adult who has been overweight all your life, you might think losing weight and getting fit after 40 is impossible. Not so, says the woman in our next story who shed 100 pounds. Lori Johnson talked with her to find out how she did it.
Over the hill? No way. Martha Van Camp looks and feels better now in her 40s than ever before. She lost 100 pounds. This size 20 dress used to be tight on her. Now she's a size 2.
I always felt like there was this fit body stuck in this fat girl's exterior.
This marketing executive, who's also a wife and mother, battled her weight since childhood.
I remember wearing a size 12 in middle school and not really being able to shop in the shops that other girls my age were shopping in. My junior year of college, I literally looked like a balloon that was ready to be popped. I was so overweight.
After endless failed attempts to lose weight, she gave up until...
Hit the 250, hit the age of 40, never exercised, realized something had to change.
And change she did. After doing extensive research on nutrition, she gave up processed foods, also known as convenience or packaged foods. These products line the shelves of the interior aisles of the grocery store and make up the bulk of fast food. Fast and easy processed foods have become the working woman's best friend. But when it comes to our weight, they can be our worst enemy. Processed foods are loaded with ingredients that can pack on the pounds, such as high fructose corn syrup and grains that have been stripped of their goodness. Processed foods contain flavorings and preservatives and other additives that can cause weight gain.
It's a chemical storm. We are so allergic to some of the things that they have put in food that our bodies just blow up.
Martha's body shrank when she stopped eating foods made by big companies and started eating foods she made at home from scratch. Lots of lean protein like turkey, chicken, fish, and egg whites. Also, plenty of vegetables. She really noticed a difference when she replaced processed simple carbohydrates like white bread and pasta with complex carbs like oats, sweet potatoes, and beans. She doesn't skimp on healthy fats either, like nuts, avocados, and coconut oil.
After like 2 or 3 days of eating the right way, oh my gosh, your energy is incredible.
Martha admits she has cut back on calories, especially from sugar, but says unlike the low-calorie diets she tried before, this one is easy to stick to because these satisfying foods make her feel full longer.
I was fat because I didn't understand the science of food.
Martha says in order to stabilize her blood sugar, which minimizes cravings, she has to eat one of her small home-cooked meals every 3 hours. Not so easy for a working mom, but she figured out a way to do it. On the weekend, she cooks her upcoming week's meals and pops them in the freezer. Then each morning before heading off to work, she grabs what she'll need that day.
It does take a couple weeks to get on autopilot, but then it's totally worth it.
Martha says eating right is the main reason she lost weight, but says exercise does play a big part in keeping her fit and healthy.
I remember I couldn't even do 3 air squats when I started.
In addition to doing cardio, Martha boosts her metabolism by lifting weights because muscle burns more calories than fat, even at rest. So if you've always been heavy, hate exercise, and think you're over the hill, Martha Van Camp is living proof that avoiding eating from a box or the drive-thru and embracing a clean diet rich in whole foods can help you lose weight and feel great at any age. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Another inspiring testimony. We'll be right back with more of CBN NewsWatch after this. A Christian doctor in the Democratic Republic of Congo has won the Nobel Peace Prize. Christianity Today reports gynecologist Denis Mukwege has treated tens of thousands of rape victims in the past 20 years. Many of his patients are the victims of gang rape by militants. Mukwege is the son of a Pentecostal preacher and found his calling to medicine after helping his father pray for the sick. The Nobel Committee cited his work to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war for awarding the prize. Congratulations to him. And you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.